Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from anthonymorganti.com, and this is episode 82 of Photo Critiques. And in Photo Critiques, people send me in some of their best images, and I critique each shot with suggestions on how they can improve it. And today, I'm very pleased to critique the work of David Greenaway. David sent me in some really interesting shots. This first one, I love the composition of these kangaroos. We got three of them that are looking right back at David, and one can't be bothered, and another one's kind of hungry. That's a pretty cool shot. The shot itself, I love the composition. What I've mentioned before in the past is whenever you have anything really close to the edge of the frame, if you're going to print it, unless you want white borders around the print, you're going to end up having to crop some of it to get it to fit on whatever size paper you're printing. And you would lose part of these end kangaroos, particularly the rump of this one over here is going to get cut off. That said, though, in this shot here, we do have another issue. The main point of focus here are the 5 kangaroos. Because the 2 are so far to the edge of the frame, as we look at it, as a viewer looks at any image, we tend to want to look towards the middle. Because these 2 kangaroos are so close to the edge, we have to kind of strain in a way to look at them. So it's kind of uncomfortable to look at an image when you have something that's the main part of the image too close to the edge. So in that instance, for sure, I would ask that David pull the crop back. This is a crop to begin with, I believe, just looking at the dimensions of the shot. So I would crop it a little less, and I would give a little more space on either side of the kangaroos. Now, that solves that problem where the kangaroos are more in the middle. And you know, just a little more space. Now, I'm not saying to be really far away. We still want to show the detail of the kangaroos. So, okay, we gave a little more space, and the kangaroos are a little bit more towards the middle, and they're a little bit easier to view and to look at. The other thing is because we have this really a lot of green, so it's like a lot of green here, and our eyes are overwhelmed by the green. So we're not necessarily looking at the kangaroos as much because we're looking at all this green. So we still want the viewer to really look at these kangaroos. So I would recrop it, push the kangaroos back just a little. And the main reason then why you're doing that is if you go down to effects and you add a vignette. When you add the vignette, it'll further help the person look more at the kangaroos and not so much at all this green. Now, the vignette as it is now, because the crop is so close, these 2 end kangaroos are falling into the vignette. They're being obscured a little. We don't want that. We want all 5 kangaroos to be in the brightest part of the shot, not in the vignette. So that's why we're going to recrop it, and why then we're going to put the vignette. And if you look now, this is without the vignette. And if you notice the 3 in the middle, they seem to jump out a little more when you have the vignette. Now, if for some reason you can't recrop this because there's something that you know is ugly on the side that you purposely cropped out of the shot, maybe there's an old dilapidated bus over here and you don't want that old dilapidated bus in the shot or something like that, so you cropped it out, so you can't really recrop this shot. Then what I would suggest, because of all this green, then I would consider going black and white with the shot. If you go black and white, then we eliminate that problem where the green is so saturated and the green is overwhelming our senses, taking our attention away from the kangaroos. Now then, what you have to do is process this image for a black and white shot to help further enhance or bring out the kangaroos. In this case, I would probably use a brush and brighten up the faces a little bit on the kangaroos. I would probably mess with the contrast and clarity so the kangaroos stand out a little bit more. Stuff like that. You have to do it to your own personal taste. But once you do that, then the kangaroos will become front and center, and we won't have the overwhelming green just kind of getting in the way of us enjoying the look of these kangaroos. This is an excellent shot of Roger Federer, and I really got to correct something I said in a few critiques back. It was for Aaron Bobeck. He had a photograph of 2 football players, and one was tackling the other. And I mentioned that in any sport action shots, you really have to use a really super high shutter speed and freeze the action. And that's correct in most cases with football when you've got guys tackling each other. But there are some instances in sports where you want to show the motion. And in tennis, you want to show the motion of the racket and the ball. If David used such a high shutter speed, like 1/4000th of a second, and froze this racket and froze the ball, it wouldn't look natural. The ball would just be look like it's hanging there, and that's not natural looking. We have to show the motion. So whenever a ball is flying through the air, and if something made the ball fly through the air, maybe it's a tennis racket hitting a tennis ball, it's a golf club head hitting a golf ball, it's a hand throwing a football or a hand throwing a baseball, then you want to show some motion. And you'd have to, it's kind of hit and miss if you're not real familiar with the sport, what the lighting is and stuff like that. So you'd have to experiment a little bit. In this case, David nailed it. We have 1/750th of a second, f at 2.8, ISO 1000. It was his 70 to 200 millimeter 2.8 lens, which is an awesome lens. And he shot at 200 millimeters, and it looks like he cropped it too to get it a little closer. And I like that he didn't bullseye it. Roger Federer's off to the side a little bit, and it's very well done. The shutter speed he used helped evoke the motion of the tennis racket and the ball perfectly, but still Roger Federer is frozen. He's very crisp. You can see his left hand is frozen. He's not blurry. We might have a little motion in his hair, but that's okay because he's jumping up in the air. So it's a really, really nice shot and very well done. Another instance where you want to evoke some motion is, let's say, a propeller airplane. If you at an air show in an airplane, you're taking shots, don't freeze the propellers because it doesn't look natural. It looks like the airplane is just hanging there and going to fall out of the sky. So you want to show, experiment, use some different shutter speeds, but you want the plane itself to be frozen. You want the plane to be, very crisp and clear, but you want the propellers to be blurred, so the person viewing the shot knows the propellers are spinning. The other case would be cars, moving cars that you're panning. You want the wheels to show that they're spinning, or a bicycle, you want the wheels to look like they're spinning, motorcycles, stuff like that. So there are cases when you're doing action shots where you want some parts to show some motion. This is a very nice shot, silhouetted night shot. Very, 8-second exposure help smooth out the water. Using a long exposure, for those of you that don't know, you'll really smooth the water out and make it look like glass. In this case, it was fine. Very nicely done. This is a pretty cool shot, kind of the classic shot where we have the water flowing through the rocks. We used a 1.5 second exposure, f at 27, ISO 100. The 1.5 second exposure really helps the water blur to give you that blur look. Now, a couple suggestions here. The f at 27 is a really, really small f-stop, and you get that effect I mentioned before called diffraction. When you use a really small aperture, the light, as it moves through that small hole that the diaphragm is formed by the diaphragm of the lens, it distorts. You get some distortion, so you won't get as crisp and clear a shot as possible. It will give you maximum depth of field, or maximize your depth of field as much as possible, but it's not needed in this case specifically because we don't have a lot of depth of field we're worried about here. We're pretty flat to the subject. So I would say use more like f11, f8, and you would definitely get assure yourself of getting a lot more detail in the stones, because that's where we want the detail. We want the water to be blurry, but we want the stones. Now, you're probably saying, okay, Tony, if he goes to f8 or something like that, you have to use a way faster shutter speed and the water won't be blurred anymore. Now, of course, yes, that's true. Well, that's where an ND filter comes in. So you use a neutral density filter, and it will, all a neutral density filter does, it lets less light through the lens and hit the sensor. Now I know David knows this because he has some excellent shots coming up where he used a neutral density filter, but this for anyone else who's wondering. So definitely this is one where I would consider using a neutral density filter, so I didn't have to use f-stop of 27. I'd rather be around f8 to f11 on this shot. And so we could maximize the detail. The other thing is, there's the processing. It's very soft. The soft look of the water. There's not a lot of contrast on the stones, but it's well done. A lot of people would do it. I would probably kind of exploit that hard soft thing a little more. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is another way to do it. So I would bring contrast up, and I would bring clarity up. And what that does, it makes the stones look harder, if that's makes sense. So there's the original shot, and there's something I probably would have did. And maybe you like one way better than the other, maybe you like something more in the middle. But that's just to give you an idea of how you could process these shots and try to bring out something in your personality. And I really, not saying anything bad about the way David did it. It's excellent, excellent shot. This is one of those shots where I'm pretty sure he probably used a neutral density filter. This is a 30-second exposure, f11, all right, almost perfect, f11, ISO 100. It was an 18 to 55 millimeter lens at 18 millimeters, and it's very well done. We have this leading line of the pier. We could see the blur here of the person. That was a 30-second exposure, so they probably stood there for 10, 20 seconds and got partially exposed and then moved. It looks like they were over here too. Maybe that's them way down there again. But anyways, it's a pretty cool shot. As you could see, using such a long exposure, it takes out any ripple in the water, makes it very smooth and reflective. So that's the effect you want. And I like this leading line, helps lead you through the shot. We could notice all these things, and then we could see the bird up here. It's very well composed, very well done. This is another one, 35 seconds, f11, ISO 100. I'm pretty sure there was neutral density filter used here because the sky is very bright. Very nice shot. Just kind of your typical shot, when you have a dock or a pier, you kind of shoot down, leading lines going off, receding out into the distance. The only thing I could suggest on here, I would definitely take this shot. I would consider having something down here. Person sitting there would be interesting. Of course, when you're using a 35-second exposure, they'd have to be very, very still. Or you would take two exposures. You would take this shot right here. Then you would take the neutral density filter off and take a shot of a person sitting here. Of course, your camera has to be on a tripod, so it's exactly the same. Shot of the person sitting here. And then you would bring both shots into Photoshop, and you would use layer masks and just bring the other person. Just this shot would be 99 or 90% of the shot. You would just use a mask to mask in the other person or the person at the end of this dock, I guess. And that's just a suggestion. I think it helps add some interest. If there was something else a little more interesting out here, maybe a boat, then you wouldn't need a person here if you had a sailboat coming across or something like that. But I think it helps add a little bit in this case because there's not a lot out here that's drawing our attention, and our attention's being led down through the shot like this. So just something to consider. Another one, 41 seconds, f13, ISO 100. I'm pretty sure an ND filter was done here. As you can see, with the effect of having that very long shutter speed, it makes the water very smooth, very well done. I kind of like the sky too. I like that the colors very kind of different, so I really do like this shot. This shot here is pretty cool. A lot of detail here. 54 seconds, f13. Now, if David had used like that, f32 or f even 22 something, it wouldn't have been, you wouldn't have got this detail. It would have just the diffraction that would have occurred would have blurred it down at the pixel level, and it wouldn't have been as detailed to show all this kind of slime here. So it's a pretty cool shot. The colors are so different, very nice, very interesting shot. I also like too that he wasn't afraid to really tilt his camera down. We've seen a lot of critiques in the past where almost all the shots were shot like it, eye level, shot straight ahead. But here he wasn't afraid to tilt his camera down, and I always encourage everyone to do that. This is my favorite shot of all the shots. 40-second exposure f11 again. I'm pretty sure he probably used an ND filter here, and it just made the water just like glass, and the reflections are very, very stark and very cool. Very, very nice shot. I like that he processed it in black and white. I just like that. It makes it look more graphic, more interesting, and it's a very, very well done. Thank you, David, for sharing your work with us. Very talented photographer. I hope to see some more of your work someday. Very well done. Thank you. And I'd like to thank everyone who watches all my videos. Thank you very much. And if you have time, go over to my website, anthonymorganti.com. I got lots of stuff over there, articles, videos, and all kinds of stuff. I have, I mentioned about that shot. You take 2 shots and use Photoshop and use a mask. I have videos on how to do that in my Photoshop for Photographers video. You can check that out. Go over to my website. Everything's over there at anthonymorganti.com. And if you haven't already, if you could go over to YouTube and find me on YouTube, Anthony Morganti, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'd really appreciate that. So that's it for episode 82. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.